Hi, my name is Kirsten, I'm from Haakmadaak and today I'm going to show you how to crochet granny stripes. Granny stripes are a variation on granny squares. Granny squares are made in a round while granny stripes are made as a row. The stitch repeat for the granny stripe is 3 plus 1. So that means in order to determine how big your project is going to be, you can use any multiple of 3, for example 30 or 90 or 120, and add 1 to it. That's going to be your starting chain. For this tutorial, I'm going to start with 25 chains. I'm starting with 25 chains. Now I chain 3, which is going to count as your first double crochet. Then I'm going to count back to the fourth chain, so the first, second, third, and fourth, which is over here. And I'm going to make a double crochet in that stitch. Next, I'm going to skip 2 chains on the base stitch, so that's 1, 2, and I'm going to crochet 3 double crochets in this third chain. This is what's called a granny cluster. This is a term you might be familiar with when you're making granny squares, and which also is used in granny stripes. It's 3 double crochets in the same stitch or chain space. Next, you're gonna skip 2 more chains on the base chain and you're gonna crochet 3 double crochets in the next stitch. And you're gonna continue this all the way until the end, until you only have a couple of stitches left. Once you've crocheted all the way till the end and you only have 3 stitches left, you're gonna make your final cluster of the row. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna mirror the start of the row. So if you started with 2 double crochets, your chain 3 and your first double crochet, you're going to end the same way. So that means you're going to make 2 double crochets in the final stitch. That's your first row. You can now cut your yarn. For this pattern, we're not going to turn our work. So that means that we're always going to be working on the same side of your crochet. To make it easier on yourself, you can use a stitch marker to mark the right side. So you've cut your yarn, now you're going to take another color, or the same color if you want, but I use a different color. And you're going to join that color in the third chain of your beginning chain on the same side, so on the right side. You're going to join it with a slip stitch. Right this way. And then you're going to chain 3. Now you're going to identify the space between granny clusters. So here's your first cluster and here's your second proper cluster. We're going to work in this chain space. So what you're going to do is you're going to make 3 double crochets over there. So you've made 1 double crochet in the third chain of your first stitch of the previous round, and then a granny cluster in the space between clusters. And you're gonna continue making granny clusters all the way until the end, until you've made a cluster in the final space. Once you've made a cluster in the final space, you're gonna make 1 double crochet in the last stitch of the previous round. Again, we're mirroring the start of this row. So you started with 1 double crochet in the first stitch. So that means we're going to end with 1 double crochet in the last stitch. You can now cut your yarn. That's your second row made. So now we're going to start our third row. And this is basically going to be a mirror of the very first row. So what you're going to do is you take your white yarn or your original color and you're going to join it in the third chain of the first stitch of the previous row. There we go. And you join this with a slip stitch. Make sure to join it in the actual stitch and not in the chain space. That makes for a far neater finish of the side. So next, chain 3. And then you're going to make 1 double crochet in the space between the first stitch and the first cluster. For the remainder of this row, all the way until the end, you're going to make granny clusters in the space between clusters. And once you're at the final few stitches of this row, you're going to make 1 double crochet in the last space between clusters and 1 double crochet in the last double crochet of the previous row. Again, we're mirroring the start of this row. As you can see, we've started with two stitches in the first cluster, and we're going to end with 2 in the last cluster. Now you can cut your yarn. Row 2 and 3 form the pattern repeat for this pattern. So that means that you're going to keep continuing these instructions until the piece is done. Row 2 and 3 are the row repeats for this pattern. So every row 2 repeats starts with 1 double crochet and ends with 1 double crochet. And every row 3 repeat starts with 1 double crochet and then 1 double crochet in the first space, and ends with 1 double crochet in the last space and then 1 double crochet over here. And you keep repeating that throughout the piece. And you can make it as large as you want to. You can adjust the height by simply crocheting more or less rows, and you can adjust the width by adding multiples of 3 chains to your base chain. And that is how you crochet the granny stripe.